So what could you have against efforts to highlight discrimination against men in areas of social services, social attitudes and expectations and law? Isn't it time, as Glenpool puts it, for the women's sector to share the gender equality pie? If women are seeking to liberate themselves from patriarchal oppression, isn't it time for men to liberate themselves from, matriarchal oppression?
Oh, and here we go with the old matriarchal oppression. So this is a common feminist tactic. Actually, I don't know if tactic is the right word. Way of thinking, I think, is a better way of putting it. It's a common feminist way of thinking where whenever someone disagrees with feminism, they see them as the complete opposite or the mirror image of what they are. So if feminists believe in in patriarchal oppression, then someone who is an anti-feminist must believe in matriarchal oppression, right? I mean, it couldn't be a completely different system which benefits both men and women in some ways and negatively affects men and women in some ways, could it? It has to actually be, in their minds, it actually has to be one group dominating and oppressing the other. That mentality is so entrenched in them that they can't separate themselves from it to see any other form of society. It's it's rather interesting. It's an interesting glimpse into their warped mentality, isn't it? Anyway, let's continue.
Actually, I think the answer to this is no. If we care at all about men and boys, and if men and boys care about themselves, it's time to drop the pretense. The systematic brutalization of men and boys is not an equivalent to the oppression of women and girls. It is the price men pay to be the dominant class.
Oh boy. Oh, what do I say about this? So, men's issues are the price men pay for being the dominant class, which once again would include the 3/4 of the homeless who happen to be male. Right, so she's saying they deserve to be homeless because they're clearly the dominant class. I mean, you know, that guy who's eating out of the dumpster at the back of McDonald's, clearly he is a patriarchal lord who is controlling society in every way, and he deserves what he gets. I mean, that's basically the insane shit that this woman is saying. It's just fucking unbelievable that she has a job writing this shit for a major publication. And to be perfectly honest with you, it's fucking disgusting. Next.
Male socialization is horrific, but it does not happen by accident, and no amount of highlighting positive male role models can undo the harm this does.
Oh, so male socialization is horrific, is it? Yeah. Let's go on.
If men are, to quote Andrea Dworkin, turned into little soldier boys from the day they are born, it is because this is necessary for the maintenance of their power as a class.
Oh, I see. So the reason why we have a military is to keep men in positions of power. It's not to defend a country from another country. It has, nothing to do with possibly one country invading another for resources or to force ideology on them or anything like that. Oh, no. No, the reason why we have armies apparently is patriarchal oppression of women or something. And of course no sympathy for the men who do go overseas to defend their country, to defend their culture. No sympathy for the men who died in World War I and World War II trying to protect their countries. Apparently they did that for some patriarchal domination, right? Because of penis. That's her argument. Fucking fantastic. Let's continue.
Of course, the usual cry goes up, how can male supremacy be real when men and boys are suffering?
Well, I would argue, as I have done many times, that this is a fair question. If all males apparently are above all women just by, I don't know, power of testosterone or some magic penis power or something, then why are so many men homeless? Why are men committing suicide? Why do men have issues at all? It doesn't really make sense, does it? But let's see what she's got to say about that.
Why would men seek to protect something that causes them harm?
Well, the simple answer is the reason why men would protect a system which does men harm is because we're conditioned to see ourselves as disposable. And would a dominant class, would a male supremacist system really class themselves as disposable? Let's continue.
Patriarchy's fetishization of power can make it difficult to recognize that unhappiness can be an outcome of needing to fight to retain it.
Oh, so once again, those homeless men, which I don't doubt she passes every day on the way to work, they're homeless because they're fighting to retain their dominant position in society. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Yay, patriarchy. Anyway, let's continue.
The desire to separate male violence from male suffering stands in the way of a clear analysis of what hurts men the most.
Now, this particular individual, Glosswitch, only ever talks about male violence. She never ever mentions female violence, because apparently women don't do that. Violence is something, in her mind, solely associated with males and masculinity. In her mind, it is a male feature. I wish you would tell that to violent women. Oh, and for the record, the percentage of violent women has been steadily increasing over the last 20 years, right across Western society. But I guess that's somehow the fault of males and masculinity as well, I guess. I mean, you know, it wouldn't be anything else, would it? Not in her mind, anyway. Next.
As Dworkin points out, male supremacy requires men to enter into a cycle of violence and alienation. It means you can rape. It means you can hit. It means you can hurt. It means you can buy and sell women.
Oh, of course, it means that, because all those things are perfectly legal, aren't they? Yeah, maybe not. Next.
It means that there is a class of people there to provide you with what you need.
A class of people there to provide you with what you need. You mean like the men who go to work every day and act as protectors and providers? The men who go down in the coal mines or work on oil rigs, or the ones who collect the rubbish bins early in the morning, who go down and work in the sewers, who do all the dangerous work. Now, I know some of these jobs are done by women as well, but most of them, the majority of people in these jobs, are done by men, who are also the majority of deaths at work. I wonder if that's what she means by people there to provide you with what you need. Next.
Now, the men's movement suggests that men don't want the kind of power I have just described. I've actually heard explicit whole sentences to that effect. And yet, everything is a reason not to do something about changing the fact that you do have that power.
Once again, it's the assumption that we have power. It's a worldview that all men have power and all women are helpless, which, once again, let me point out, this is coming from a successful, presumably wealthy woman. Obviously not all men are successful, and obviously not all women are unsuccessful. It's a little bit more complex than one group just being above the other group. It's not black and white. Everything is basically shades of grey. Next.
Instead of asking what the structure is that dictates that men cannot be nurturing or show emotion, men's rights activism seeks to bypass analysis by bargaining on and demanding a unified celebration of manhood. Well, no. Not yet. Manhood doesn't deserve it.
Oh boy. Well, first of all, we are saying that we should be able to show emotion. It is the feminists who come out with the male tears mugs all the time and try to shame us whenever we bring up problems, call us whiny, crying man babies and bullshit like that. Try to shame us into silence into denying our problems, into being quiet and just shutting up, because apparently only women's problems count. That's because we live in a male supremacist patriarchy system where only women's issues count. It's an interesting contradiction you've got there, isn't it? But that last sentence, manhood doesn't deserve it. Oh, boy. So whenever you hear a feminist say that people think that feminists are just female supremacists, and they're really not, and I agree most of them aren't, but there are clear examples of some who are, and this is one. Once again, Gloss Witch just hates men and masculinity, and I feel a great deal of sorrow for her two sons. Could you imagine what it'd be like growing up in a house with this woman, where she thinks that your very existence is the embodiment of evil? What kind of life would that be? What kind of effect would that have on you when you're a growing young man? And I can't imagine what type of person her husband must be to put up with something like that. Next.
In his book Irrationality, Stuart Sutherland offers an example of how the rivalry between groups may be so irrational that each may try to do the other down even at its own expense. In an aircraft factory in Britain, the toolroom workers received a weekly wage very slightly higher than that of the production workers. In wage negotiations, the toolroom shop stewards tried to preserve this differential, even when by doing so they would receive a smaller wage themselves. They preferred a settlement that gave them £67.30 a week and the production workers £1 less, to one that gave them an extra £2, £69.30, but gave the production workers more, £70.30. This seems to me a good analogy for how men's rights activism functions.
Well, no, it's not. She's automatically assuming, once again, that all males have it better than all women, which is simply not the case. It's clearly demonstrable that there are a large number of men, who on average have it worse than most women. Yeah, sure, there are a small number of men at the top in CEO positions and in government positions. They're the minority, right? But when you look at the homeless, 3/4 are male. Now, those 3/4 of the homeless that are male, right, are not in better positions than the vast majority of women who are not homeless. They don't get, special patriarchy points. They're not using gold-plated toilets or eating at fine restaurants, right? Their life is shit. If they're lucky, they don't freeze to death during winter, and they might be able to find some kind of meal out of a dumpster at the back of McDonald's. That's not fucking privilege. And actually being concerned about those men and trying to change the way society sees them, actually making them visible, right? That's not taking anything away from women. That's not trying to bring women down, right? That's trying to lift those men up. And if you can't see that, then as far as I'm concerned, you're a fucking inhuman monster. Next.
Men and boys must suffer in order to preserve the differential between them and women and girls.
Oh, I see. So men suffer to remain dominant. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. If you're fucking insane, it does. Fucking hell. Next.